I now call this regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order at 5:30. Please call the roll.
Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Schubert?
Here.
Ms. McCall?
Present.
Ms. Bennett?
Present.
Mr. Carpenter?
Here.
Ms. Saley?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We will now take a moment of silence to remember our students, Jenna Newcomb and Jason Jenkins, along with other students that we've lost over the years. We want to keep them and their families in our hearts, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The mission of Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in an equitable first-class education for a changing world. Before we go any further, I want to say thank you to Ms. Kim Pedersen and Aaron Hill, who are working behind the scenes to produce the board's broadcast via YouTube live stream and Comcast Channel 20. I wish to welcome Superintendent's Student Advisory Council Representative, Habiba Kamel, from Guilford High School. Are there any changes or corrections or additions to the meeting minutes? If not, by show of a nod, of consensus, thank you. Ms. Haley will now lead the Performance and Monitoring Committee portion of the meeting.
Tonight, we will have 2 presentations. First, we are happy to welcome Principal Brenner and the students and staff of IB at Conklin to join us and share their progress this school year. As a reminder, this is our newest program and was launched just this year. I'd like to welcome Principal Brenner to the podium to tell us more.
Hi, good evening, School Board. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come this evening. I'm really excited that we could have some students, and thank you to so many families for showing in support of your students. We appreciate you, and that's one of our pieces. It's a special program that we're really trying to have our family engagement be a part of this opportunity. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Kolak, our amazing music teacher, who's going to get our students started in a performance, and then we'll talk more about the program after they're done performing this evening. So thank you. Awesome. Thank you, friends, for coming. Parents, you're welcome to take your kiddos home at this time. Again, we appreciate you coming this evening. They did a fabulous job. If we give them one more round of applause, thank you. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you coming. You guys know you're welcome to. You're welcome to. Thank you guys for coming. Can we leave as oh, yeah. I didn't hear you. Bye, guys. Thank you. We're good. Thank you guys for your patience, just so we could get the kiddos situated. Are you able to hear me okay? Perfect. All right. I'd like to also introduce Mr. Smith, my assistant principal, will be presenting tonight as a team, and really just want to share some of our past progress, what some of our current work, and then also be able to give the board an update in relation to initially when I came to present to the board with Dr. Saltis, some of the work that's transpired since our initial planning to keep you up to speed, and then mostly spend some time at the end giving you guys some time to ask us any questions that you have that we could answer in relation to any of our work. Mr. Kolak, thank you again. Thank you. So we really started the journey. There were prior discussions with the board and really started school year 22. And so last year really was a lot of the planning year. And so at that time, I really was on a journey of hiring all my team, inclusive of Mr. Smith, and really was spending a lot of time at that time on parent orientations, getting information to families. What is this newest special program? What does it look like? How is it different from some of the other RPS offerings? And then we spent a lot of time in the summer with training. So I was able to hire my staff early. We had monthly meetings where even though a lot of them were at different buildings, they were able to come together as a team and to start to build that culture together and start to work together. We were able to visit some other local schools in Chicago that were already previously implementing IB programs that had Spanish as the focus language as we do, as well as in the summer we started our first initial training. So IB Institute requires that all teachers go through IB training just because the methodology is different, the teaching tools that we use are different, and so that'll be something that will continue on an annual cadence. So this summer we'll have training set up as well, and so that'll be not just for our new teachers but for all of our teachers to continue to learn best practice as we're designing our IB units of instruction. We also purchased 2 new curricular tools for our Tier 1 resources. So we do have the full package of CKLA, which is our reading series, as well as for math, we got a new series, which is Bridges, that really does a lot of inquiry-based type of teaching, more problem solving, and so we spent time with our teachers training on that. Brad Marin, who is our IB coordinator. IB requires a specific role that works with the Institute to ensure that we're meeting IB benchmarks, that we're setting the philosophy forward, that we're hitting those checkpoints that IB requires. So she's similar to an instructional coach that's in a lot of our other buildings, but works with them directly to make sure that we're meeting those program requirements. And then we had a back to school celebration again, with it being new, where families could come in, see the school. And so really a lot of the work we've been doing this year is designing those units and then putting them into action. So IB has 6 different themes, like sharing, like you heard in the song, sharing the planet, who we are, how the world works. And so it's been really great to see the teachers design those. We've spent time, we have weekly PLCs in addition to the teachers have daily planning time. And so that's really been a time for us to make those units, try them out with kids. And then our goal next year will be to have all 6 of them implemented and completed. And so you can see in these pictures on the left-hand side, that's what our math time looks like. That's Bridges, and we have a program that's Number Corner. It's a lot of spiraling of concepts or reviewing of concepts for our kiddos. And then on the right, we have monthly assemblies. So a big part of our IB program is that culture. We do a lot of teaching of social emotional learning standards. And so we just do just because assemblies where the kids sing songs, they get recognized for their efforts within the school. And so that's a piece of our regular culture. And then we'll have Mr. Smith talk a lot about our data. A lot of it is really giving a positive trend and trajectory compared to previous data. And so we're happy to share some of that this evening as well. IB requires that there's a focus on what's called learner profiles. And so things such as you see here, principled, caring, open-minded. A lot of this is how do you really become a good person and how are you prepared after you leave us for a workforce or a college trajectory to be able to work with other people. And a lot of IB really focuses on that context outside of your school community and to become more of a global citizen. And so at our monthly assemblies, teachers fill these out every month, and we call up kids by name to recognize them and again, really trying to reinforce what we're teaching within IB for those things that we're seeing displayed positively within the school setting. What we'll continue to do, as I said, is continue writing our IB units. That's some staff development in the picture there that you can see of our teachers. And really, our goal is IB first authorized us as a candidate school, and then next year, once we've created all 6 units, they will come and do a visit on site. We have a consultant that works with the IB coordinator and myself. We meet on a monthly basis, and so they'll be the ones that'll come do a mock visit with us before we have our official authorization visit in the year. And then we're really excited about expansion and adding 6th grade to our building next year. And so we're in the hiring process for that, in addition to some of the planning that you guys have seen at the board level for the curriculum implementation. And we also will be determining, IB requires a language and assessment policy as a part of the program, and so that's something we'll be working on as well, since learning a second language for all of our students is one of the pieces that makes the program unique. The teachers have to create planners that are turned into the IB organization, and so this is more of the teacher side that you can see. We use a program called Toddle, and they're able to outline those units, and it really is centered around that central idea. A lot of our IB themes are really that integration of science and social studies standards that we're required to teach in Illinois. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Smith to talk a little bit about some of our initial data that we've been tracking since we started this year in August with kiddos.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Brad Smith. I'm the assistant principal at Conklin. I've been there for 6 years. IB is something that not only am I the assistant principal, but my 2 children go to the only other local PYP program in Freeport. So it's something that my family trusts as well. It's an amazing program. So as you can see, this is a Pulse monthly check that we send out to families the beginning of each month. They receive the Pulse check and they give us feedback. So 70% of our responses are via text, 21% are in Spanish. New voices for every check, about 30 new voices on average on each check. And 92% of our families report happiness with the program. A nice thing that we see. So when you receive comments back and when people can voice frustrations, right? Usually that's what you see when you get comments. 64% of our comments have been positive feedbacks, positive praise in the program. So that's very nice to see. And so these are some things that our families are saying about our program. You'll see, I'm not going to read through each one, but communication is a big thing that's different in the IB program. Further along in the program, we'll be doing like student-led conferences and stuff like that. So students are taking ownership in the program, but also like we do a lot of communication. If you check out our Facebook page constantly, almost daily, if not multiple times a day, we're communicating with families via Facebook, Seesaw, text, email, whatever necessary that we need to reach our families. All right, and these are just some 10 reasons that IB programs are good for students, are good for families.
And those are some of our kiddos in action. So the nice part this year when we've been doing our orientations is those are our actual students doing actual IB. And so when we're explaining it to incoming kinder families, this is actually what it looks like now that we've started the program, or able to share some of that.
All right, and the data. So I want to go back to talking about our teachers because they're doing a really amazing job. So think about the undertaking that they're doing this year. 2 brand new curriculums, in a brand new program in a different way than they're used to teaching. And these are our results, and we're so happy with what we're seeing from our students, or from our staff and students. All right, so go back 2 years, from fall to winter on MAP, we declined for the last two years. This year, we did not decline, but we did not grow, at least in reading. We'll move to math. All right, we're declining for the school, -4%, -3%. This year, +2% growth over for our achievement for math. So we're very excited about those numbers. Attendance data. Last year, we were at 87.7%. This year, we're up, this is through March 10th, but we're up 5.2% for attendance, almost at 93%. So we're seeing great trends there. And then I promise you that we're not just picking these numbers for the good things that we're seeing at the school. These are behavior trends that we're seeing last year. And so we picked these numbers, or we picked these areas based on, these were the highest things that we were seeing at Conklin last year. So battery 3, we had 85 instances last year. We're down to 21 at this time, or as of March 10th this year. That's a 75% decrease. Physical aggression 1, 2, a small decrease, but I will tell you, we are seeing much more physical aggression 1s this year, and then we saw a lot more physical aggression 2s last year. So we lumped those 2 together because that's how we've been tracking them throughout the year. Reckless behavior 1 and 2, down 57%. Total level 3s and 4s, those are the highest, the most egregious offenses, down 63%. We significantly reduced those. And so the total number of referrals were down about 30% for the year. But most of the, all the data that we're seeing is they're low-level offenses, level 1s and 2s, because we have great systems in place. All right, so employee engagement survey. As you can see, we have a positive trend from last year, 63% up to 95%. We're right there, 92 to 95% in every single area. Staff is trusting us, the support that we're giving the staff, that they like it, they feel supported. So huge increases there as well. And then last one. So a 4.5 is highly engaged. And so in 2 of those, we're right at highly engaged, and then just below highly engaged for our staff. But a huge correlation to engagement as well.
What questions does the board have that we can answer in relation to any of this, just or in general with our IB implementation, or things that have been brought forward to you?
Any questions? Comments?
I just have a quick question. What is your percentage of students that walk or versus riding the bus?
So I don't know the exact percentage. Most of our students are either pickup or bus riders. Not very many students walk.
We have about 5 buses. I do the drive line and he's at buses, and most of our families pick up their students, but we do have some walkers like down Halstead in the apartments and things like that. But a lot of families, because of where they live, as far as safety, drive to pick up their kiddos so they're not going across an intersection that's unsafe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And at the start of the program, I recall there being a consultant made available. How is that going, and where are you with that?
So we had trainers that came on site in the summer for all of our teachers. Those were different people from IB but are trained from the organization. We have a gal named Linda who's our consultant that my IB coordinator and myself meet with on a monthly basis. and then sometimes more if needed, if there's a topic we're working on, or if we need to reach out to her, she's readily available. She will do what is nice. She'll come and visit us probably about next winter and do a practice site visit with us, walk the building, go through some of our systems, look at some of our units. And then after that, like, we would have our actual authorization visit with people that are not our designated consultant, where a team would come visit, collect data and things like that. But she, even right now, since our teachers are in the initial planning phases of their themes, she said, hey, send me some of the planners. I can give you feedback on that. And then that helps my IB coordinator to guide those teams in their common planning time on what to improve, or this piece is weak. Can you add this? You know, those kinds of things. So I feel like it's been a good relationship, and we've had ongoing communication with IB.
Very good. So you indicated that the teachers, this is a new curriculum for the teachers. How are the teachers doing overall, and do you see any changes coming for the upcoming school year? And
Yeah.
if so, why?
Yeah, great question. I think, yes, it's been a lot for them just because they are not only learning IB, and the IB part they're really creating. So I guess to the second part of your question, some of the changes will be they're going to have to create the remaining units. So we've only created 3. And then they will, I would assume next year, part of the IB process also is reflecting on the current units that you've done, and then after that making revisions. So we have 5 days in August where we'll have curriculum planning days with our teachers to support that work. So step 1 will be go back to the 3 units you've already created. Now that you've actually taught them with students, what revisions do you see? What tweaks do we need to make? And then get into planning for the next upcoming units that we haven't taught as of yet. Also, because the science and reading curriculum have been new, we've created some look for documents. My IB coordinator pops into grade levels, is collecting some data to give them feedback to just exactly that. What are your needs? And then that helps us to know, since we are lucky enough to have weekly PLCs, what do we need to plan on? Do we need to spend some time with some of our math quick checks and then taking some time to look at that? So trying to be responsive to those things with the needs, but I think the teachers wholeheartedly would say, because we do have the MOU with the union and are able to have those weekly PLCs, that's valuable, as well as our teachers, because there's so much that's new. They team together, and we have a common planning document where all their lesson plans are together. So they really are working as a team to do that work, because there are a lot of things that are new that they're navigating.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So how many first-year teachers did you have starting in this program?
4.
And, excuse me, and they would be returning?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, and some of them will be in year 2 with their mentors, so they're still continuing to have that level of support, you know, in addition to my IB coordinator, that even though she's not their mentor, is another person that's able to work with them, provide feedback, do the common planning with them, those kinds of things. So yeah, we're actually looking at, it's a possibility. We assume we'll have more new teachers next year, as we're adding another section of 4th grade and then 2 6th grade sections. So it's likely we may have new teachers, or at least new to RPS teachers, you know, as we continue to grow and expand. But
Thank you. And is there a common theme with the curriculum for them getting adjusted, or does each teacher have their own issue, for lack of a better word?
yeah, a lot of it was learning it from the beginning. Both the reading and math curriculum, the lesson plans are there's a lot of text. They're text dependent to read. So you have to sit. It's not, I can just look and I'm on lesson 4.2 and this is what I'm doing. So both of them take a lot of highlighting, using sticky notes to be able to prepare themselves for actually executing those lessons. And in year 1, it's hard to determine the pacing, what's most essential, because you haven't delivered the lesson before. So I think for all of them, that's the biggest learn, and trying to get prepared going forward for next year of then, again, they've done it, they can be reflective of that and keeping some notes to be able to guide things in a more effective fashion once they've done it before.
Thank you. And what grade level would you say that you see most parental engagement? I saw you had a lot of kindergartens and first graders here tonight. So for like 3rd through 5th, what would you say the percentage of parental engagement is?
Yeah, we invited these families because the kiddos had practiced and recorded the song with communications before.
I saw the recording on YouTube, by the way. They did just as well.
Yeah,
then
so
as well.
that's why they were invited. We did, to the point of like some of our POSIT pulse check data. One of the things parents brought up was they wanted to have like a donuts with dad, muffins with mom type concept. So we did that as one of our title events in the morning at 7 a.m. And we had like over 170 of our families, K-5, show up. And so when you think about parents, right, and there's the amount that have like siblings in multiple grades, all of our conferences were, you know, I would say 85% or better attended in all the grades. And we've done monthly functions with families in different capacities, whether it's a burpee night, something we have at the school. So I do think, again, because when we have the orientation, we talk a lot about, you know, parent opportunities and parents partnering with us in this work, that's really helped our success rate, as well as like, I love the POSIP. I think it's great. It can be answered via text. We get a lot of good feedback from our parents. We share it back with them, and then we're doing something with it, right? And it's immediate. So that, you know, helps us to make good decisions too.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
As you look at teacher mentoring in the IB program, how as you look forward to forward planning, will the teachers be mentored for a year or 2 years, especially with the 4 new teachers? Will they be mentored again next year? Or how does the mentoring work?
Yeah, so they will stay, they will have a lesser layer of support as year 2. In this year, actually, most of my mentor teachers, like my art teacher had a district level mentor, but the rest of them, kind of to your question, had some of the teachers on site that were their mentors. And I think that was valuable because they're living in the same world. We're all learning the new curriculum together versus an external mentor in this scenario. So, I mean, the district provides through their mentoring program the specified level of support. However, like I said, my IB coordinator, she does a lot of that. She attends, you know, the team meetings, and if she's sitting down with second grade and they're looking at data and then planning how to mix up their kids, I mean, that really is kind of that ongoing layer of support outside of the mentoring program, because we do have some teachers who were not new teachers, but were new to the district that might not get that same level of support, as well as obviously, like I keep mentioning, but I think it's critical is us having weekly PLCs and having a lot of time to do that and look at instructional practices or assessment together.
Thank you. Any other questions?
The plan is for this to get rolled up as the kids go up to 7th and 8th grade, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and can you remind me what your space situation is for
Yeah,
that? Okay.
so when we rolled out the program initially, when I first was brought on to the district and we presented to the board, the goal was to roll up the program actually through high school, so K-12. So really it would be whatever the board and Dr. Jarrett helps us determine as far as where we go next in relation to further implementation. Right now, what you guys saw before is next year we're adding the 2 portables for 6th grade implementation on site, which, thank you, we are beyond thrilled to have it in the same location. I think that's huge for continued continuity of the program and implementation, and from parents, that's been a positive as well. So, however, going forward, we would need, if we were able to give feedback, like we would like a K-8 building for implementation of the program, but that would require additional space on site that we don't have currently, because the building was really set up to be a kindergarten through 5th grade, like 3-strand building. So as we roll up, that will be problematic if we didn't get additional space on site.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yep.
Yes, go.
And just along those lines about
Yeah.
what you were asking that we could help you with space-wise, is there anything else that you would like to let us know that you need help with?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, space and just continued advocacy with the program as we continue to roll it up. It will, I know, become more complex when you're talking about high school courses and different, IB does have 2 different paths in relation to high school implementation that I think do fit very nicely with some of our district current efforts, such as like more college and career path. So there's both, they have both passed. They have more of the trajectory that's the college collegiate path that's very similar to like AP courses in rigor, but then there's also more the career pathway. So it could fit with nicely, but that's going to take a lot more like planning and things like that. And then there are just the continued, financial obligations as far as the PD is expensive. The fees annually are expensive, and that's just set costs with IB that there's no way around that that's a part of, to be a part of the organization, what's required. So those would be supports that we would continue to appreciate. Thank you for asking that.
Great, thank you.
I do just have one other question.
Yeah.
As you look at the curriculum with the IB program, are there any mechanisms in place where students are preparing for or getting introduced to careers, like career type of programs prior to getting into the 6th and 7th grade?
Yeah, so we have in IB in the elementary level, a lot of it is like, how do you learn that's different and some of the units, but we do for their units, we have like community partners that have come in for some of our units already, like when we were doing things with Who We Are, and we try to make it real life, to your point. So even like an example, we did a 1st grade unit that had to do with like light and sound, and we had NASA that came in. Then art and music worked together, where our art teacher had them make guitars, and then in music they were practicing the sound utilization with that instrument, right? So trying to give them through that type of light, some of the exposure there, but definitely that's something as we continue to grow, we'd like to see some more established partners, but I felt very blessed in the work that we've been doing. We've reached out to a lot of places, and a lot of places are really willing to jump in. And then we've even had some instances of some of my families that are like, hey, I was an IB learner and I went through the IB program, and that's why their kids are with us. And so we've been able to kind of use them as some voices within our school. But definitely that's something we'd like to continue to grow and feel like has been really meaningful for our kids.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions?
This is not for Ms. Brunner. That is your name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a general question, and it may be for, I don't see Mike, but I see Ms. McCall. So if the ultimate goal is for high school, and you currently don't have the footprint or the space for high school, have there been any discussion in regards to the master facilities plan about this? And what's the price tag on it?
I will defer to Mr. Phillips regarding the price tag, but there has been discussion, so I'll let Dr. Jarrett fill in those lines. I do not have the price tag readily available.
So we are not at the talking about the price tag phase, so you haven't missed anything, Ms. McCall. Mr. Carpenter is also representing us on the task force. So at this point, we are just talking about priorities, and we will be rapidly moving to talking about how those priorities would be funded in the next few months, so that when it gets to the board, and I think we're targeting July, we'll have a much more tangible sense of that. But IB and special program expansion is certainly one of the many topics we're talking about on the task force.
Okay, and again, this is not related per se to Conklin, but I just want to remind everyone as we continue to plan, and we want every school in our school district to be successful. And we don't want any school sacrifice for the success of another. So I certainly hope that we can come up with a plan that we can continue to make sure that Conklin is successful, while we simultaneously make sure that our other schools are cared for as well. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you all for letting us come this evening. And if there's any further follow-up or anybody wants to come visit at any time, you're more than welcome to do so. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next report comes from Chief of Student Services, Jennifer Lawrence, who will be reporting back to the board on the status of this year's revision to the Student Code of Conduct.
Well, we don't have a song to start our presentation. Sorry about that. But we do have handouts for you. I wanted to make sure that it was easy to follow along, and so we've tabbed the pages that we've made additional changes since our last meeting, and I'll go walk you through each one of those. On page 4, our discipline philosophy, we added some examples of restorative justice, so that we just added a few of those things so that people, the public and community families knew what we were referencing when we made that comment. On page 7, down on the bottom, we've circled these as well. Up on the top, actually, community partners and referral resources. We're working with the communications department to have a landing page where we will have the student code of conduct. Our intention is that you will be able to click the student code of conduct. It will take you to alternative languages that you can have it read to you. So we'll have accessibility features as well. So that if there's readability issues, that we can support families as they read the code of conduct. Also on page 7, we wanted to add down at the bottom, we wanted a disclaimer that parents are not to be asked to pick up students in lieu of suspension. And what that really means is no parent should be asked to pick up a student unless they are being suspended from school for discipline reasons. I'm going to pause there. Any questions on any of that?
Yeah, I have a question on the picking up the students unless they're being suspended. So if a student is acting out and they are having challenges containing or redirecting, what other alternative will the school have? And do we have the support in the school that will be able to assist in that?
Good question. So all of our schools have calm classrooms at the elementary level. At the secondary level, there's currently in-school suspension, and they also use that as kind of a timeout area. I don't know necessarily that we refer to that as a calm classroom at the high school level, but that's what it's intended for. So there are those supports. We have a school social worker at all of our schools. At the ones that we do have vacancies, and so at the ones that there are vacancies, there is a social worker pairing that we do have in case that we need that. We're currently working through our SAS protocols to ensure that our administrators know when to call SAS if a student is dysregulated for a considerable amount of time. So there are internal mechanisms that we should utilize prior to calling a parent to ask them to come and take their student home. So if we're sending a student home for behavior, it should be a suspendable event.
Thank you.
On page 8, threats and intimidation, we added language for group intimidation. We saw some of these instances throughout this school year in some of our schools that we wanted to make sure that we had language that reflected some of the current trends that we're seeing with discipline. I'm going to skip page 10. Page 10, you'll see some tabs on there, but I'm going to skip that for a second because there's multiple pages that are attached to that. On page 11 and 12, we clarify that damages are for replacement cost, and that's not for any cost. I wanted to make sure that it was that we were clear on that for our schools and for our families. On page 14 and page 15, we removed all of our gang-related behavior violations, so to not negatively stereotype our students based on fashion trends or some of the ways that they may wear their clothing. And we also looked at the other language within our code of conduct, and much of that language was in threats and intimidation and bullying. I'm going to pause there. Any questions on any of that? On page 21, we struggled with this, I'll be honest. We struggled with the word bona fide, that it was understood within the community. And we did change that. I'm not sure that we necessarily got to where we wanted to be with that, was just making it easier to understand. So we're open to any other suggestions there. We did change that to tenets of an established religious organization. And we really struggled because changing the wording would change the definition of bona fide. So that's kind of where we were at with that. On page 22 for search and seizure, you can see the changes there that will make all reasonable efforts to contact the parent prior to the end of the school day. There's an additional revision that is not in this red line that you will see when you vote on this code of conduct, that based on the severity of the situation, necessary measures will be taken to contact parents or guardians before the search takes place. So we're going to add that language into that section. And that the electronic documentation will be done through our eSchool platform. And so Dave Graffey is my Director of Student Services, and I pull data, discipline data on a regular basis. This will become one of those data points that we pull in our weekly reports that we will monitor and train our administration on as needed. And the last one that I want to point out is on page 31, police notification and interaction. We updated language and guidance for the police involvement and CPI training. And you can see in the middle of the page that's circled, we wanted to make sure that we were very clear that in no instance shall a district employee ask a police officer to handcuff a student. And also in no instance shall a district employee utilize a police officer as a school administrator. And then if you want to go back to pages 18 through 20, we worked with our school administration and looked at our arrest data, and we really cut down the recommended police contact for level 4 violations. So you can see that noted in levels 3 and 4. Those are all circled in pages 8 through 20. We really wanted to make sure that we were only utilizing the police in very serious situations. Any questions on any of those page number revisions?
Ms. Bennett?
Okay, on page 22, thank you for the last addition in that section. For the electronic documentation, I know you said that both of you, for example, in student services, are going to have access to the report, but when the electronic documentation is submitted, let's say, who will it be submitted to first? Like, who is it routed to, or what's the process of where it will go?
It will go right into eSchool, so it's not necessarily a person, but we will pull that information on a weekly basis.
Okay, so if an incident happens documented in eSchool, you could, if you know of an incident that happened on a Monday, you could go in eSchool and check it as soon as it's been entered?
Correct.
Before pulling
on Monday.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And then one more.
I do want to add, and Dave will get into this as we go through some of the training, but we are going to implement a training for search and seizure so that we properly train our administrators on reasonable searches.
That's all that I had.
Dave has a few other updates that he would like to give you about implementation, accountability, and training.
All right, thank you. The last time we all spoke about a month ago here at the last committee of the whole, we identified that through our various feedback sessions and listening sessions that we identified 3 different buckets or main ideas that were coming from those feedback groups. The 3 things that we talked about were the need for additional training, implementation, and accountability across various different stakeholder groups. So on the slide here in front of you, you can kind of see some of the things that we're already doing and will continue to do to support that work in those 3 areas. So for our students, we are going to prepare a Discipline Talk slide deck like we do every year. So again, that will be revised to discuss the changes that are in the proposed code of conduct for next year. We will continue to work with students and families whenever students have those discipline conversations with the administrators at the school level, that families are aware that they can be talking to schools about the panorama interventions. So not just what discipline is being done to my student, but what interventions are being done with my student. And I think that's very important for the family to be thought partners in that as well. We do have some additional alternative education programming that Jen has spoken about, which we will continue to build out. And then one of the other things that we have this year is a See Something, Say Something poster. We found that that is more of a reactive approach. So if you're seeing something that's going on in your school, this provides an opportunity for students to report that so that it can be dealt with accordingly by administration. But one thing that we wanted to build out was if an individual themselves wants to let people know that they need help and they don't know who to reach out to, that there would be a poster for them to be able to sign to log into a QR code, or it would direct them to somebody at their school so that they can get additional support and help for that. On the staff side of things, something that we are going to do new for next year is provide a staff student code of conduct slide deck, which each building principal will review with their staff during one of the first institute days prior to the start of school. This will ensure consistency that the same message is portrayed throughout the entire district. Schools will still have the ability to add slides to that presentation, but there will be required slides that are required for each school. This allows for each school to have the same message, but still modify things to meet their own climate and culture within their building by adding the additional slides. Some other things that we are going to continue to focus on is our communication. Jen touched on this a little bit earlier, but being able to provide data back to the schools of what data trends we are seeing from a student discipline lens to support the work that the students and the staff and the administration are doing in the buildings to kind of curb some of those increases in the discipline that we are seeing. And then again, one of our goals is always for consistent implementation. So if something occurs in one building, you should expect that there would be a similar, if not exact same response in a different building. Our code of conduct does allow for a little bit of flexibility as each case is handled on a case-by-case basis, but you shouldn't expect to see a very drastic difference from one building to another. And then lastly, at the admin level, we will continue with the tiered training models that we have done for this year. So again, I know one of the things that I'm going to focus more heavily on next year is diving into the individual school data with the deans that come down for the work. We will be looking at implementation data. We will be looking to make sure that codes are being enforced consistently. And there's also going to be some kind of peer review in that, which I think will add that additional accountability piece when other people know that other schools are going to be kind of like looking at that to say, is this how we handle things so that we can have consistency from school to school? Are there any questions on anything on the training, implementation, and accountability side of things?
Yeah, when you say peer review, who are the peers that'll be helping to review those instances?
So we currently do that right now. We have kind of case studies that we put our assistant principals through, and what we generally do is just redact the school name or the situation, or we'll take a situation and we'll fluff it up, so to speak, so that we can add some other pieces to it that might not have been in the incident, but are relative to it so that we can train on it. So when we say peers, it's dean to dean, so implementers of the code of conduct with each other.
Any other questions? Mr. Schubert.
I just want to say thanks. I know that we worked on this. We had a meeting that went long outside of, the time that we allotted, and you guys were really great and receptive to questions. And I think those conversations, now to see it kind of come to fruition in this, I really appreciate the effort, and I think it gives a more unified, I think it just feels like a really good collaboration from board level to all the work you're doing. So I just appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Bennett?
Well, if I was going to go first, that's what I was going to say, but that's fine. No, honestly, appreciate all of the back and forth, responding to emails, meeting with us. Truly, truly appreciate it. This is lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if there's any other revisions, you know how to contact me. Be happy to listen and make any additional changes prior to the regular board meeting.
Ms. McCall?
And I just wanted to say, too, along with what everyone else said, I'm really excited about the new implementations that you guys are putting in as far as, making sure that the district is all on one accord when it comes to the student code of conduct, the district, the students, and the parents, and things like that. So, again, a round of applause, and any way that we can help, just, let us know. I think this is a good step in making sure that we're all unified on the student code of conduct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pearson?
Thank you. Again, good job. I am on a personal mission, though, for parental engagement, and I'm going to sing this song until I can't sing anymore, because I get more calls than not, and the number one question I ask, do you have a student code of conduct handbook? No. Do you know how to access it? No. I'm not exactly sure where the communication breakdown is, and for a good percentage, some parents, for the most part, they don't have any trouble out of their child, and then they have this one incident that no one saw coming. So the interest isn't there because there's no history there. So I get that. I really get that piece. But I think in order, with the effort that you all put into, you know, the revamping and revising and all the input that the board members have had, we really, really need the support of our parents being engaged and aware and knowledgeable, so that they will know what to expect in the event of. One last question, and this may be for legal, the changes that is made where it relates to the police officers, the search and things of that sort, that will be included and revised in the administration regulation, correct?
Correct. We have a placeholder for the May board meeting for 7.150.
Very good. And this is a very minor one. It was just a discussion about the fighting. And it was a question that came up in regards to, it was just simple to suspend or give consequences to both students. But there was a question raised on if the student did not fight, but did not initiate to receive any consequences, because if the student was never hit, there wouldn't have been a reaction. So why, and I didn't see if that had changed or if there's any discussion or any expectation where that is related. I think Mr. Carpenter brought that up some time ago.
Sure. So in our code of conduct, we don't allow any student to fight, whether it's fighting back or fighting first. And
Correct.
So the consequences that are deemed appropriate by the administration should run through Robinson factors. And that would help an administrator, and this is on Dave's training agenda, is help administrators determine what is appropriate for example, somebody that is following a student around a building and they eventually fight looks a lot different than two students just engaging in a fight. And so the consequences may look different for each student in the first instance versus the second instance. Okay. And so providing training for that for our administrators is part of our training platform.
Okay, thank you.
I also did want to mention that I didn't steal, I recycled a one-pager from another district that will go out to families this in the fall. And that is kind of like the overarching people to contact at the school. So instead of sending a book of 30 pages, most parents will keep that one pager maybe on the fridge, that these are the people that you would want to contact if you have issues with student discipline at your school.
Very good.
Ms. Bennett.
One last thing. We had talked before about, for the addendum or attachments, I don't know what they're called, the report forms, that there was going to be one created for teen dating violence. Is that still the plan for when they're printed or at some time?
I don't know if we'll put that in the code of conduct, but it would be on the landing page. So it would be in the QR code, because it would be the investigation report. We have an anonymous reporting report, a form that they could fill out for any instance, and then the investigation report would be separate, so that we wouldn't publish that investigation documentation for teen dating violence.
But there'd be like an option that they could select on the form?
Correct, yes. So if they want to report something anonymous, they could click on the different types of reporting.
Okay, thank you.
And we would have those forms in paper in the offices like we do now. So they could either do it digitally with a QR code to their phone, or they could pick up a form in the main office.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lawrence and Mr. Raffi. Our last item tonight is to review the consent agenda. As you review, are there any comments, questions, or concerns? Okay, I did have a question regarding item J, the AT&T contract and the legacy services. I know that we have extended the contract to go one additional year to cover the legacy services under that Centrex, I think that's Centrex lines. Where would the legacy services be landing after that 1 year?
So I can answer that question. We're currently working on a transition from the legacy services into one of three buckets, either in a VoIP solution where it's through a network capability or a wireless solution are the two main options. And then there's a third option that we're investigating as well. So when we look at our elevators, our gas meters and things like that are using these legacy solutions, we're working with AT&T to determine what the best approach is to transition those. Ultimately, what AT&T is doing and many of our phone service providers over the next several years are abandoning the old copper lines that are in the ground. So that's why we're working on doing that. We've been doing an inventory over the last year or so, and we're continuing that process, and that's why we're working to transition those to one of those three options going forward.
Okay, and that is different from the IP Flex circuits?
That's correct. The IP Flex services are our actual VoIP service, so that provides our dial tone for about 4,500 of our extensions in the district. So that's our main phone service that we currently do over a network or an internet service.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Ms. Bennett.
I have a question about letter N for Dr. Gallagher.
Shoot.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so in preparation for the calendar, can you tell me about any process or steps that went into listening sessions, meetings, who was included in revising, or did you? Okay, that's lovely. Great. Okay. Yeah, you didn't just create it on your own, I assumed. So whatever went into the collaboration, that's great. REA got to be included.
Yeah, this is an example where whether it was through Let's Talk or otherwise, we recognized that we were getting feedback from parents and from staff with regards to our e-learning plan and our calendar. And so we knew that we wanted to meet with our union leadership and have them reach out to teachers that wanted to be involved in the ad hoc committee to do some revisions to next year's calendar, but also to give some feedback on the potential for our calendar in 2025-26 when we will have HVAC across all of our schools and we'll have a lot more flexibility for what that calendar will look like. So the main points quickly that you'll see here is that we wanted to try and embed in next year a couple of days where we could have makeup days if we have to take emergency days. So we said that the February Teacher Institute could be a day where we did a makeup day for student attendance. That's similar to what Belvedere did this year when they took emergency days on the same day. And then we also plugged in Kashmir Pulaski Day in the beginning of March and said that that would be a holiday, though if needed, it could also serve as a student attendance makeup day. By having that Kashmir Pulaski Day in there, that moved our end date for the school year from, I think it's June 9th, Thursday, to June 10th of Friday.
Any other questions?
Nope, thank you very much.
Yep.
I do have one other question, couple questions regarding Q&R, and this would be for Mr. Mike Raya. And I know I've probably asked these questions before regarding these education centers, and I know they are required to provide services to our students who are on IEP alternative services. As I'm looking at the CDH That's a big price tag on there, $387,000. Do we have a student that's designated to attend that?
So we don't have any students currently going to CDH. It's more or less of we're trying to find other therapeutic day schools specifically that specify in autism. So those schools, we currently have a wait list. So we're trying to find other schools that'll help us like alleviate that wait list. CDH is a little bit more expensive, but their bread and butter is autism, and they have specifically one-on-ones with every single student. So that's why it's a little bit more expensive. We have nobody slated to go there. We're going to take a look at the wait list and see who could go there. But when it comes to these therapeutic day schools that occur during the school year, I have to guess on how many. So we just plugged in 10 and just kind of guessed on like who can we get in before the end of the school year. Dolan, on the other hand, we have one student slated.
Okay, that was my question, because the price
it's a big difference.
was a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. That concludes our report for performance and monitoring.
Thank you, Ms. Haley. Ms. Stanford will now lead the stakeholder committee portion of the meeting. Ms. Stanford.
Thank you. Here we go. Okay, so we will begin by showing our committee's 12-month agenda. We have 2 feature presentations tonight. However, I don't think our second person has made it in. Her flight was delayed, so we may only have one.
Excuse me, Mrs. Stanford. Board President Pearson suggested that, I know Dr. Reed is prepared to present if needed.
Okay.
But Board President Pearson did suggest that if extra time would be needed for Dr. Valbrun to be able to present, we could move that to the end of the meeting into her governance section, just kind of push that back if that's okay with the rest of the board. Well, Dr. Reed, will that help, or are we better just having you present? How bad is the travel delay? All right. Okay. So I think then what we will do is have, if it's okay, have Dr. Reed present in lieu.
Sure.
And perhaps have our other guest present first. Thank you.
So our first presentation will be with Jason Holcomb, who is representing the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board. The second one will be an update on our work with Valbrun Consulting Group. But first, let's begin by celebrating the good things happening in our district. Okay, I'm not working. There we go. This is the season to celebrate all the wonderful things happening in the world of the RPS fine arts community. We begin with the All-City Choir, which was a powerful experience that brought our schools together to perform the evolution of gospel music. Our students prepared this music with the assistance of Dorothy Page Turner, who wrote and directed this program while working with our students throughout the semester. We're grateful for the support of our students and the chance to come together through the arts. Next up was All City Art, which was a wonderful creative opportunity for our students. They got to learn practices such as figure drawing, ceramics, embroidery, painting, and drawing, while also sitting in on guest lecturers who shared their passion for art. Our students' talent and dedication to their craft flourished in this environment among other passionate artists in the district and community. Thank you to all our students, staff, lecturers, and guests for making the day so wonderful. It was an honor to participate in All City Band with Dr. Bao at NIU. Our students gained valuable experience in college performance styles, interacting with different professionals through sectional rehearsals and performing on the NIU music stage to showcase all they had practiced and learned leading up to this event. We're already counting down the days until next time. Thank you to Dr. Bao, NIU, our band teachers, our students, and everyone who made this event possible. Oswell Oz Taylor painted a Children Around the World mural in the vestibule of Fairview Early Childhood Center. Oz has painted murals in Sterling and Rock Falls. He also drives a first student bus for Fairview and transports the deaf and hard of hearing children. Great work, Oz, and thank you. On Read Across America Day, we celebrated the power of literacy to expand our minds and our understanding of the world around us. Constance Lane Elementary School invited guest readers from all over the community and our school district to come and read to their students. It was a wonderful opportunity to engage with our students and introduce them to new ideas, cultures, and perspectives. Guest readers could read their favorite Dr. Seuss book or book of their choice. Thank you to all the guest readers who took time out of their busy schedules to read to Constance Lane students. As part of the Read Across America Day, School Board President Denise Pearson took time out of her schedule to read to students at McIntosh. Here she is photographed with some of the students. Uno, dos, tres, Andres are TBE Spanish-speaking students K through 3 from Hillman, Whitehead, Lathrop, Washington, and Carlson had the exciting opportunity to enjoy the songs they learned through our benchmark phonics curriculum performed live at the Coronado Performing Arts Center. We're proud of our students and staff who braved the weather conditions and made it to the performance. Thank you to our bilingual staff, all the teachers and administrators who made this program possible. For the month of March, Superintendent Dr. Jarrett and Earl Dotson Jr. visited the following schools. And here are some photos from their visits. Marshall Middle School, Circles of Learning, Auburn High School, Kennedy Middle School, Welsh Elementary, Barber Two-Way Language Immersion, Bayer Early Childhood, West Middle School, Rolling Green Elementary, and Froberg Elementary. Love seeing Earl's face. Tune in to our latest 205 Vibe podcast episode featuring Cherry Valley Principal Carolyn Tim. We continue our series with schools and principals as we go in depth into their fantastic achievements highlighted on the Illinois State Report Card. Gain insights into their journey towards excellence in education. Don't miss out on this enlightening discussion. We are looking forward to our legislative luncheon. This year's legislative lunch is scheduled for Wednesday, April 24th from noon to 1:30 at Jefferson High School. We'd like to engage our legislators on a focused discussion around our facilities master plan and how the state of Illinois can support our efforts. Afterwards, we will offer a tour next door at our College and Career Readiness Center for anyone interested. We look forward to our school board members being in attendance along with students from the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. Please RSVP your attendance with Amy Lozano if you haven't already done so. We look forward to seeing you there. And now for our feature presentation, I'll turn the floor over to Jason Holcomb on behalf of the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board.
All right. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you this evening. I'll give you a brief and concise update on the work of the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board and their distribution of the half-cent sales tax for mental health in Winnebago County. My name is Jason Holcomb. I am the Director of Community Impact for Region 1 Planning Council. And we have an intergovernmental agreement with the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board, which I will talk a little bit more about. Community impact is addressing community problems at the level of community conditions. You may have heard of this called going upstream. I will save you the story of the children falling in the river. I'm sure you've heard it, but that is kind of the idea of going upstream and finding those root causes. And that's part of our work at Region 1 doing community impact. In our partnership with the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board, We assist them in the distribution and allocation of the half-cent sales tax for mental health in Winnebago County. We do strategic planning for them. We have built a competitive grant-making process for them that we manage. We do program evaluation for each of the funded programs, as well as community capacity and community systems. We do systems coordination within the context of making sure that our organizations that are funded are working together to create a continuum of care. And we do community engagement, engaging the public into our planning efforts, and also making sure that there is promotion and awareness of the funded programs back to the community. As it turns out, this is also a pretty cost-effective model. If you compare our operational costs to other mental health boards throughout the state of Illinois, you can see that we are the lowest overall percentage of operational or administrative cost, whether you're looking at that as a percentage of revenue or your percentage of expenditures. The average mental health board across the state is about 10%, and we don't even think that's bad, actually. That's pretty consistent with what a lot of funders do, but we are less than 5%, trying to keep things very cost effective. We are statutorily required, the mental health board is statutorily required to fund and operate according to strategic plans that happen every 3 years. We have just completed our second 3-year strategic plan, which will be for program years 4 through 6. The first strategic plan was for program years 1 through 3. We use a community support system model to guide our strategic planning efforts. This is a framework that was developed coming out of the deinstitutionalization movement, which kind of started in the late 40s, early 50s. And by the mid-70s, there was this growing body of research identifying what a community really needs in terms of an array of services that allows for people with serious mental illness to live and recover in their community, as part of their community with their friends and families, and not in institutions away from their community. Using this model, we have done 2 rounds of environmental scan surveys in which we have essentially assessed the capacity within our community by surveying agencies that provide mental health and substance use services. And you can see that as a cross-sector that includes government, nonprofits, private practice. And when we look at the types of services that we see in our community within this community support system framework, you do see a lot of what we generally think of as mental health treatment, which is those clinical components of mental health treatment: diagnostic evaluation, supportive counseling, a little bit less on the medication management side, but we see that's one of the strongest areas of availability of services. But we can also see that there are other community strengths that we have in client identification and outreach, family and community support, and there are some areas where we have significantly less providers of service, such as supported housing or crisis response services. When we look at the funding types, and again, this is our second environmental scan survey, so this just took place in 2023. Looks a little bit different than the first time we did it, and I'll show you some comparisons. But already 3 years in, we see that the mental health board funding is a significant portion of the types of funding that organizations receive for their mental health services. Generally, we might think of fee-for-service as the primary type of funding for mental health services. That's billing insurance. But we see that grant funding, whether it's local funding or state and federal grants, are also a significant part of the funding for mental health services. So this is the comparison data I was talking about when we look at the environmental scan survey from 2020 and we compare it with 2023. We see that in the 6 priority areas that the mental health board focused their funding on, we see that there was a significant increase in the availability of mobile services, meaning services that are not just available in an office setting, but might be available in partnership with a community provider or out at a space where somebody is living. That's really important to the board's mission because part of their mission is to make sure that services are available when and where someone needs them. And so always making somebody come to an office makes it more difficult to access in many cases. Another change that we've seen over the first 3 years of funding is an increase in the amount and the availability of dual diagnosis, or what we call co-occurring disorder treatment. So a lot of times funders have made a provider pick one or the other. Are you treating somebody for mental illness or are you treating them for a substance use disorder? You have to pick one. The reporting mechanisms force you to pick one. And so the treatment becomes very compartmentalized. But we know that people are not compartmentalized, or at least when they are, it becomes very unhealthy. So when somebody is dealing with a mental illness and a substance use disorder, it is best practice to treat those together. And we see that there has been an increase in the availability of those co-occurring services, and we do not have any other explanation for that than to believe that that's been a result of the Mental Health Board's funding and the encouragement that we have given organizations to treat the full person with co-occurring disorders. We also do a community survey, and so again, we did this the first time that we did our strategic plan, and we have recently updated that in 2023, public participation survey. And when we do this, we feel like it's really important to understand what perspective somebody is representing when they fill this out. So we asked them to identify the perspective through which they're providing this information, whether that's a top-level administrator at an agency, a direct service provider who's maybe frontline staff providing services day to day, whether that's an individual who lives with mental illness or substance use disorder, or the family member of somebody living with mental illness, or maybe it's just a general community member who's interested, who's a taxpayer and says, hey, I'm interested in what's happening with these tax dollars. And so as I go through these results, I want to kind of show you what the difference in perspective is and how that looks. So when we look at the lived experience perspective, combining both someone living with mental illness, which is the pink color, or a family member of someone who lives with mental illness or substance use, which is the purple color. And one of the questions we asked was, in the past 12 months, what was a service that you needed or someone in your house needed, but you couldn't get access to it? And the top answer, even though it's also one of the most available services, is that kind of traditional component of mental health treatment, which is psychiatric services or counseling. So while we know it's widely available, it's one of the most available services, it's also something that people are identifying with. It's still hard for me to get that service, even though it's available. So we know that that the need still exceeds the availability. And then the second thing was finding a group or person with somebody who has a similar experience. So we call that peer support, being able to identify and connect with somebody else who is also having that experience. And then we asked, what do you think would have helped get these services? And the top two answers were more providers and less wait times. And we really believe those two answers are interconnected, because I think if we had more providers, we would also see less wait times. Then when we move to the perspective of mental health workers, the blue color we have frontline staff, and the purple we have top-level administrator of an organization. And we see when we ask from the mental health worker perspective, what services do you think are easy to access? The top answer was finding information about services, but you see, even from this perspective, receiving psychiatric help or counseling was much lower in the response. And you see that's one of the lower responses for this question. And then we ask, what do you think could help increase access to mental health treatment? The exact same top two answers. So from the lived experience perspective to the mental health workers, we're hearing more providers, less wait times. And finally, when we get the perspective of a community resident, we wanted to know, what are the things you want to learn more about? And the top answer there was finding information about services. We want to have more awareness of what's available, what's out there. So as we moved into our updated strategic plan, we really wanted to expand our focus. In the first 3 years, we really were focused on programming, filling gaps, making sure that there was more services, more programs, and we're keeping that as a core part of what we're doing. But we're adding on to that now systems coordination, which is looking at the structural barriers in our community that still make it difficult for people to access services or make it difficult for programs to reach their full potential. So workforce, for example, falls into this category because if we fund programs and they can't hire staff, they will never reach the capacity of what their funding allows them to do. And thirdly, we want to increase our promotion awareness. Now that we have a great array of programs that we're funding, we want to make sure community members, whether it's somebody that needs services or somebody that might not now, but might in the future, that they know what's out there and they know how to access those services. So what are we actually funding? Well, this is our third year of funding. We now have 44 programs, and you'll see on the left-hand side the distribution of funding to each program. And on the right-hand side, you'll see how that same distribution of funding breaks out into the Mental Health Board's 6 priority areas, which includes mental health treatment, those clinical components, case management, crisis response services, family and community support, housing, and client identification and outreach. When we look at our numbers served, this was our numbers from the second year of funding, and you'll see a really big peak that's kind of from late adolescence to early adulthood. And we weren't terribly surprised by this because this also corresponds with the age when most serious mental illness onsets or when those symptoms really start to show up. Most crisis happens during this age category as well. But even though we weren't surprised by it, we felt that we needed to do better because we don't want to wait for a crisis to be the first time that somebody accesses services, and we want to get earlier and earlier in our identification and in our intervention. And so in the second year of funding, the Mental Health Board saw a significant increase in earlier care, and you see a much larger peak. You still see the same peak from late adolescence to early adulthood, but we now see another one that's earlier, and it's during kind of mid-childhood, maybe late elementary to middle school age category. And this was really a result of some intentional funding decisions to make sure we were funding programs like YMCA, like Boys and Girls Club, where mental health services can be provided where children are. Another example of a program that was recently funded was the Alignment Rockford expansion of the EDI work to go county-wide. And as I mentioned, the Boys and Girls Club programming, which allows for, in partnership with Rosecrans, to have mental health services available on site at the Boys and Girls Club. And another partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, including Rockford Barbell, which has been a really innovative program that engages youth in some physical activity while addressing trauma and social emotional learning. And lastly, the YMCA, which I mentioned, is another program that provides mental health services where the kids are, where they're playing, where they're doing recreation, and having that availability of mental health resources on site. A few more that I won't mention. There's a lot. There's 44. So we do have a link here to our full funded programs page, which you can see descriptions for all 44 current programs, along with program entrance information, meaning how would you refer somebody to the service, who would they call? And I've also brought with me, it's a lot of data. We also have some good stories. So I brought with you our impact report from our first year of funding that matches some stories with that data, and a RAC card that can help you get quicker access to that funding resource page. And with that, I will certainly open it up for any questions.
there any questions or comments?
Just one quick question. I know that these programs are funded through different agencies. Is there ever a time where a person that is partaking of these services have to come out of pocket, either on a sliding scale or?
So our funding contracts dictate that somebody cannot be turned away from that program based on an inability to pay. Most of our programs have policies in place that might dictate a sliding scale or some definition of what inability means. If they do generate revenue from a third-party funder like state insurance or some other managed care provider, that revenue generation does get reported to us and we reimburse for expenses in excess of revenue, essentially. But to answer your question more pointedly, our programs cannot turn away based on the inability to pay. And if they were to exceed their funding and not be able to meet the demand, we would expect them to communicate that to us.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I'm just curious, because of a lack of agencies that can take the funding or any people that can provide the services, what happens with the funding, say, at the end of the year when it wasn't all utilized? Does it roll over, or how does that work?
Great question, thank you. So great example, in our second year of funding, we got about 66% of the funds that were awarded were actually expended because it is expenditure-based reimbursement. You have to spend the money and then ask for the reimbursement for it. It's making sure that everything that goes out in a check was actually spent on what it was supposed to be spent on. And any money that doesn't get spent at the end of the year stays in a dedicated fund that can only be used for mental health and can only be allocated by the mental health board, which is that public appointed board of officials to allocate and make those funding decisions. So it stays there, does get kind of rolled over, so to speak. We recognize that we had about $10 million in surplus funding from the first 3 years, and we created an accelerator program with that funding to address some of the kind of system capacity issues in our community around mental health services.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. So just to make sure, you know, the public is aware, like, could you give an example of what type of expenditure? So like if it's a new private practice, will there be any funding for any capital expenses, things of that nature? Like what actually can be done to help build this program up? Thank you.
So when a program gives us a proposal, they do that along with a budget, and there's line items for personnel, fringe benefits, if there's any capital expenditures, which can be allowable if approved, contractual, anything, it's all itemized in the budget. Any deviation from that budget, more than $3,000 or 10% of one line item, would require a budget modification. So it's kind of all laid out before the program is even approved. And then we just basically hold that program to the approved budget, and they have to submit to us the evidence of their expense, which could be payroll logs or a receipt or an invoice that they paid for an expense.
Okay. This is the last question for real. So are the funds able to be like reoccurring? So say 1 year you fund this program, it does well and everything. Are they able to reapply for funds, or is this a one-time shot, you know, use your money as you can, and you know, how does that look?
Most of our programs do get renewed. If it's a successful program meeting its objectives, then the board's intent has been to renew it. In our first 3 years of funding, we did 1 year contracts because we were learning and we didn't want to mess it up, right? We feel like we have a handle on things now, and the board has now moved to multi-year funding. And so we will be entering some 3-year contracts coming out of the next round of funding decisions. And we'll be entering some 1-year contracts that will have the option to renew up to 3 years.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I have a couple questions, I think. was just looking at the YMCA program that you had up there. Are there any, and it sounds like that provides a mental health counselor at the after-school programs. Is that correct? Okay. And so I'm just wondering if there's any other programs or services that you fund that are provided in Rockford schools.
Well, I would say we have a lot of programs that provide services to youth, and we certainly don't have a restriction on our end from those services being provided to students of any school districts in Winnebago County. I believe some of those partnerships have already formed what I perceive as naturally or organically. I don't know the behind the scenes of all that, but that's not a limitation on our side for those partnerships to happen.
Sure, I was just wondering if there was anything that you knew of that was specifically being provided in the schools besides that YMCA program. But
I think a lot of it is being provided in those after school and summer programs. I can't speak to any that I'm specifically aware of that is being provided on site at a school. I believe the EPIC program with Brightpoint is being provided on site in some school districts throughout the county, but I don't know or I don't believe that it is being provided on site within Rockford Public Schools. Okay,
thanks. And then I was trying to, or I'm not sure how to word this, I guess, but I'm trying to figure out if there's, are programs that you fund, can you tell whether the programs are new and would not have existed without the mental health board existing, or whether there's some that are, replacement funding, I guess, for other programs?
I think I would say that I can say with a high degree of confidence that most, if not all of the programs would not exist without the mental health board funding, because that's really part of how we make funding decisions. The board's not trying to fund things that could exist or, hey, we know that you could bill state insurance for this service, but we'll just give you funding instead. In fact, we've done the opposite of that. We've said the board has said there's certain things they won't fund because there would be the ability to build that program through some other mechanism of funding or billing. So really, these are unique programs that really just were gaps in the current other funding models that exist, or they're expansions of programs that can't survive solely on the fee-for-service revenue.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just one other question.
Oh,
go ahead. I just wonder, is there any, if a new program was interested in funding on your website, is there funding or maybe an grant application window for funding?
Yeah, so there is. The current application window closed a few months ago for the core programs, and the board is actually voting on decisions for that tomorrow. As I mentioned, there's going to be two types of contracts. Some will be 3-year contracts, some will be 1-year contracts with optional renewal. Of course, the board's going to have to evaluate if there are programs that don't get renewed, if there's surplus funding then that could potentially lead to additional funding opportunities. We also have an accelerator program, which is that surplus funding. We're pretty far along into that process, and it's going to be awarded kind of on a first come, first serve as they're making those funding decisions. So once all that $10 million has been awarded, they won't be taking and reviewing new applications on that. But as it stands, all of the funding has not been awarded for that, so we could take new applications for the accelerator program. But I will say that with some caution that we've already received numerous applications there that are under review. So I don't know that a new application, I can't guarantee that a new application would make it to review if all of the funding was already allocated, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of quick questions. One, what would it look like for these organizations to partner with RPS 205 so we could have services in the schools as support? That's the first question. The second question is, what, do the Winnebago County foresee returning a mental health facility to Winnebago County? And will they be increasing services with the partners that you have for JDC? And to be in place at that location?
Okay, let me answer the first one, and then I might need clarification on the second one. So on the first one, I think I might ask you all what it looks like to have more partnerships. Like I said, that restriction does not exist on the mental health board side of things. The board prides themselves in having programs that can be out of office, that can be mobile, that can be in the community. I'm showing you who's funded right here. So if conversations can happen with programs and there's ways to connect for that earlier identification of children that have mental health issues, we're not standing in the way of those partnerships. Our only restriction is that it's not supplanting any existing funding, that exist in a different area. So that's the only restriction we would have in our contracts that would have to be, that would need to be aware of. On the second one, are you talking about when you said bringing a facility back to Winnebago County? You're talking about like a state-operated hospital?
I am, and that question is bigger than both of us. So cancel that question. I know where to go to get an answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, just not are you, if you can answer, but are you showing support or rallying or emphasizing the need to have a state mental health facility here?
Yeah. So we fund in part a crisis residential facility that has 16 beds for voluntary inpatient. And that really is where the nation, not just the state, is going with crisis. We all understand the need for a safety net for involuntary admissions. It is my understanding that when Singer closed, there was one Winnebago County resident in that facility. So I think while we all have the perception, I think, that was a huge blow to our community, I think sometimes the data does not match up to that perception. And I'm not saying that the conversation can't or shouldn't happen, but I just know that the data hasn't always shown that there is the need for more inpatient beds necessarily.
If I may, I just wanted to remind you of our partnership currently with American Rescue Plan dollars that's funded to bring 14 full-time BHSAPs, behavioral support student assistance professionals, into our school. And it's very similar purpose of early intervention, early recognition, and being able to offer year-round support, not just in school on site during the school day, but also to the family at the Ware Center when we're not in session, and making sure that we're able to continue to support the child and the whole family.
Go ahead. I think just one thing to add to that statement is our funding will be running out for providing those resources and services. So for us to be mindful as a district and as a community that is a really good resource, and I love having that partnership, but we will have to figure out where to find quite a large amount of money for continuing that. So,
anyone else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, our second presentation will be Dr. Reed talking about Valbrun Consulting Group.
All righty. I have 2 losses. I don't have Val from here, and I don't have a song, so I'm 0 for 2. But I do want to thank our board for you all continuous support of Rockford Public Schools' equity learning journey. It led us to have a consultant agency like Valbrun, Dr. Jared's forward thinking to get us a company that just does not survey but actually has actionables within our district. So she wanted to be here. She was at 70-degree weather in South Carolina, and she was heading here and didn't work out for her. So she is just getting to O'Hare Airport. She wouldn't have made it on time. So she is really hurt that she couldn't be here. She was looking forward to tonight. So I am going to try to be her the best I can tonight, really quickly. So with her partnership, we've been able to receive readiness assessment, equity audits, leadership development and coaching. That goes to our principals, coaches, to our department, our cabinet. We've received professional development, strategic planning, and strategy management and technical support. These are all things that she's provided. And she's not just done it in places that are not reflective of RPS. Her consultancy agency has worked in places like we're familiar with, Champaign, St. Louis, Baltimore, and Memphis and areas like that. On our learning journey, she wanted to really impress on us the model that she's been using. We've been looking at cultural awareness from ourselves and how we build relationships and how that lends ourselves to various cultures and awareness that helps us develop our systems. One of the overarching objectives of Valbrun is to cultivate diversity, foster inclusion and belonging, and promote equity. We as a cabinet and as administrators in our buildings took an IDI, an intellectual development inventory, which is very personal, but it also looks at where we are as a district. She would have wanted to talk about where we were as a district, which is really important. And one of the things I know she wanted to impress is that we did want to make sure that we look at the inventory from the standpoint of our board, because in many of the districts, the board takes it first, and then it goes to cabinet, and then it flushes down. So that is one of the talking points I know she would have wanted to touch on, the ideal of having our board take it, because next year we're looking at having the people that coach our teachers and staff be the ones to take the IDI inventory. Through that lens and that inventory, we're able to examine the ways that we can learn from and about the people that we engage. It's a cultural reference, a bridge that we build through this IDI. And we're able to look at what she calls a metaphoric way of looking at a lens, where we look at our policies, our outcomes, our power, our relations, and our solutions. And I think the IDI is very, very important, because you see where you are in yourself, and then you see how we work as partners, and then you see how our decisions from the board to the cabinet to our principals help form our decisions that we make here at RPS. The ultimate goal is to advance equity. We want to promote equity. We want to elevate the culture of our organization, to be effective communicators, to make sure that we have the internal capabilities to make informed, equitable decisions, and to make sure that our resources are allocated in an equitable way. One of the things that Valmer is really focused on is the way we build systems. Our cultural awareness influences how we build systems and how we make policies, procedures, and practices within our organization. So there are certain systems that can threaten equity. And one of the things in our IDI, we look at where we are on that continuum and what systems can get in the way of our own equity imperatives, whether it's financing, housing, health, things that are external from our district, government, employment, criminal justice, or even our own education institution. But we want to make sure that we're reflective. I think if Val was here, she would talk about the focus within our organization, the trainings that our principals have received so far. And we've received training in ways that we are looking at which organizational systems, policies, and practice foster or hinder our equity imperatives. What stops us from being equitable or inclusive as a district? which organizational practices need to be reviewed to determine the impact and experience on those within our organizations, as well as those that we serve. Where are we as an organization on the continuum of becoming a transformative and anti-oppressive organization? That's what this slide talks about here, going into it in detail. And I want to just really harp on Valbrun's training model. It's really inclusive, based on collaboration. It's in the moment of where we are now as a district. When Val is here, she's really taking feedback, formative, summative, looking at assessments and making decisions for our principals and our staff on where we are in the moment. I know Morgan can talk about that a lot in detail with the principal training, but our goal is to create personalized and differentiated learning continuums that meet the immediate needs of our leaders and staff and provide relevant learning opportunities that are shared in best practices, ways that are more equitable for our journey that is personal to RPS. So she uses a see it, name it, do it model, and then reflect on it. She wants to make sure that we live the learning model that allows us to participate in the content and transfer that learning to others. And this is what we've done so far this year. We've been able to unpack what we call PELP. PELP is a model that really looks at the core of the instruction, the scholar, and how our work gets all the way down to the student in the classroom and how the instructional practices play out through that PELP model. She's been able to help us develop a shared vocabulary that we use in cultural competency. She's been able to make sure that we're able to name the challenges that can get in the way of us being an inclusive culture or organization. She's been able to help us identify solutions and create a psychologically safe space for us to share. One of the things that was really, transformative is she came to a meeting and it was some things that, the principals wanted to have Dr. Jarrett share, and Dr. Jarrett, the next meeting, was right there ready to go and able to deliver on those actionables. She's not a consultant agent just pulling out data and just making decisions. She's really in the moment, and she challenges us to be available. I would say, I'm not sure how much we participated before Valbrun, but at each meeting, our entire cabinet is there and participating in the process to the best of our ability. And she's making sure that we develop an equity-centered school improvement plan and goals that are considering the social, emotional, cultural, and academic diversity of our scholars. She has something that she calls the SMART goals, but she calls them SMART-E because they're smart, inclusive, and equitable goals. She makes sure they're really bite-sized so we can take them and use them immediately. And they're really authentic and culturally responsive to the stakeholders that we're serving and the engagement strategies that we need in the moment. So as she co-designed, she would have did a lot better job than me. I wanted to say that. She would have just really wanted to push on the fact that we're on a journey that many people are taking across America, but we're taking it really intentional, and that everything we're doing is really co-designed with our principals and their partnership. She's so in the moment that I know board president talked about family engagement, and that is her professional development tomorrow, how to build equitable family engagement schools in our district. So that is definitely tomorrow's PD when she's here. So I really just wanted to share what she's done so far. I know she would have wanted to harp on the fact that next year the IDI is something that we would love to see our board take. It's really important that we see where our board, because you all make those policies, it goes from the board to the cabinet, from the cabinet to our principals, and ultimately we want our teachers and staff to be able to take the IDI down the road. In districts like Urbana and some of those other districts, the entire district took the IDI. It shows you where you're on the continuum, and you make your professional development and everything you do around that IDI inventory. So that is what she would have did if she was here, but a lot better. And so I'll take questions to the best of my ability.
Any questions, comments? Ms. Haley?
As far as the people who have taken the IDI, has it been like all of the teachers, staff, what across the board? Who's taken it?
So far, we would have definitely needed a different approval for that one. We have had our cabinet take it so far, and our cabinet really did a great job with it. They had one-on-ones, and the experience was awesome. We've had our principals all have taken it so far, And the goal for her next year is to definitely get it to the people that are coaching the principals, the instructional coaches. I know Morgan can speak more to that. And our goal is to get it down to our teachers. We really need the entire district to engage. I know her next step, though, is really seeing what the board felt about participating in that IDI, because the administration, where we land on that continuum, can kind of determine where we are as a district. Are we minimizing equity and saying it? Are we adapting or accepting of it? And where we are, because we each took it and we might have each individually landed on one place on the continuum, but then she gives you a score on where you are as a board and cabinet, where you are as an administration. So you want to probably see that before we get it down to our teachers, so when they're taking it, we can kind of see where the board is, the cabinet is, the principals and the staff is all that. That is her ultimate goal.
As a follow-up to that, as far as the people who have taken it, what type of feedback have you received from them?
It's been well received. It's kind of shocked a lot of us, because she has what she calls your perception of where you are versus where you're actually at. A lot of times you perceive yourself in one place. Even myself, I thought I was killing it. No, I got to come down to earth, and she meets you where you're at. So the principals, even the principal feedback has been really phenomenal when they were able to engage in it. I think our cabinet, when we took it, was the best, was to see where we were as a cabinet. And one of the things that she was excited about, she felt Rockford was in a really good place, that we were in a better place than she thought we would be based on some of the things that we perceived. But we are in a place where we're primed to do a lot of equity work. I think that is a testament to how our board is pushing that agenda in everything we do. Dr. Jarrett's vision is all equitable, and everything we do is aligned there. So we really were in the right direction that we needed to be headed. I think that's why she really was urgently wanting to see where our board sits, so we get that information collective so she can really sit us on that continuum and continue to roll out that planning.
And one final question here. I think it's important that somehow the teachers get a piece of this type of training.
Yeah.
Only because a lot of these trainings take place in organizations, and it's kind of, you just kind of do to do.
Yeah.
You don't do to become.
Yeah.
So as far as once the training is done, I know you mentioned live the learning model. I guess I just want to see how that would play out in a continuous model.
Yeah, I'm going to let Morgan speak to that.
Yeah, so in work that we've done with our principals, we have had principal coaching beyond just the IDI work and the interpretation of those results to actual boots on the ground. What is this going to look like in our schools? So for the last, Valburn has come every other month. So in the last 3 months, pardon me, the work that she has done has been, it's been very relevant work for our principals because it relates to exactly where they are in the seasonality of school improvement and planning for that. So she had presented, you could see some of the outcomes we had. She'd worked with our principals on creating SMARTY goals. So in the school improvement plans, we have our 3 goals, K through 8, it's literacy, numeracy, chronic absenteeism, then high school chronic absenteeism, freshman on track grad rate. All of those goals now have the IE integrated into them for their school improvement plans. And then she had also come in when we're drilling down in those school improvement plans, another meeting that she had with the principals. What are now that you have disaggregated the data and you've added the IE onto the goals, what are the corresponding activities and the progress monitoring that's going to take place as it relates to the IE portion of that? And then when she's with principals tomorrow, we had mentioned stakeholder engagement is another one. That's going to be the focus tomorrow. We've all just gotten our results from the employee engagement and satisfaction survey, where just had the window close on our family school quality survey. And so this is the point in time where, as those are standards of practices, the principals engage their school leadership teams in doing a root cause analysis of the results from those surveys and then creating an action plan. So she, in 2 parts tomorrow, is going to walk everyone through when you do that root cause analysis, how do you do that in a culturally sensitive way? And then when you create an action plan, she's going to provide basically like a menu or library of resources that the principals can bring back to their school improvement teams for doing that analysis that's culturally sensitive, but then like, what are the actual actionable things that you can do based off of your targeted populations, your students furthest away? So it's authentic work that the principals are engaged in, but really honing in on the equity portion of that work.
I'm sorry, one other thing. I know everything seems positive. Have you received any type of pushback or on the IDI, the training, or any part of it?
You know, it's been well received. I think, you know, it may have always been a pushback prior, but once Val gets there, it's like she gets the room in a place that she explains the why in really great detail. So when that why is out and we're looking at our data and we're being reflective, and you see, I think prior to the cabinet being there consistent, you might have heard that, but the cabinet is on board. So I have not personally, not sure Morgan's seen it, but I've not seen pushback to it. I've seen it be well received to the point that what you're saying is that we do want to get it to the spaces where the teachers are asking about it in various spaces that they want to participate in this journey as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, really quick. So I'm very interested in the board taking the IDI as sooner rather than later. But I'm a strong advocate for teachers and increasing their knowledge and helping them and supporting them and setting them up for success. And I think that as soon as we can get that to the teachers would be beneficial as well.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Right.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we just have a couple more things. Okay, 10 RPS 205 school social workers spent March 11th through the 15th attending the 2024 School Social Work Association of America National Conference in Baltimore, Maryland, the SSWAA, celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. The conference theme was Pearls of Our Legacy, Resilience, Strength, Growth. The keynote sessions focused on caring for personal health and well-being, using intentionality regarding the energy we show others, and the changing political climate and its impact on the mental health of our students. Thank you to all our social workers and the amazing work you do on behalf of our families, staff, and students. Continuing our recognition of social workers, Mayor Rockford Tom McNamara issued a proclamation for Social Workers Month. Shout out to our very own social worker on our school board, Nicole Bennett, who was recognized along with some of her colleagues at a city council meeting. And Nicole's going to read the mayor's proclamation.
Okay, only got 2 minutes, so best of luck to me. Okay, proclamation, here it is, everybody, for you to be able to see. Okay, whereas social work is a profession truly dedicated to helping people with the primary mission of enhancing human well-being and helping meet the basic and complex needs of all people, especially most vulnerable, oppressed, or living in poverty. And whereas social workers follow a code of ethics that calls on them to fight social injustice and to respect the dignity and worth of all people. And whereas for more than a century, the social work profession has worked to improve society by playing a role in establishing a minimum wage, promoting behavioral health, Social Security, and Medicare, and working to ensure equal rights for all. And whereas social workers are on the front lines helping solve pressing social problems, including an increasing demand for mental health services, an opioid addiction crisis, and economic inequality. And whereas social workers operate in our schools, hospitals, community organizations, the military, mental health centers, social service agencies, the criminal justice system, corporations, and local, state, and federal government to meet people where they are and empower them to live their lives to the fullest potential. And whereas the 2024 Social Work Month theme, Empowering Social Workers, embodies the need for society to support social workers. Now, therefore, I'm not Mayor McNamara, but the Mayor of the City of Rockford proclaimed the month of March 2024 to be Social Work Month in Rockford, Illinois, and encourage all citizens to support social work profession and celebrate the life-affirming work they do to help societal needs.
Very good. Okay, the Jarrett family partnered with Master Builders Masonic Lodge number 33, to fill in the financial gap and provide tuition assistance for students in the Rockford University Pathway Program. The partnership started in 2017 and to date has awarded more than $30,000 in scholarships to students in the program. On March 13th, a presentation was held at Rockford University with members of Master Builders, Rockford University administrators, and the RU Pathway students, as they were presented with a $15,000 check for 5 students to receive $3,000 each. On Tuesday, March 12th, we held our second coffee chat, The Next Pour. The event was held at the Geisy Jenkins Community Resource Center, featuring Board President Denise Pearson and Board Vice President Tiana McCall. And as always, we appreciate and thank our moderator, Pastor Copeland. We had a fruitful conversation around ideas for improving community support and developing various strategies that could foster engagement, providing appropriate resources, and addressing the needs of students and families beyond the classroom. The communications team will continue the work of synthesizing the feedback and work with our school leadership teams to find solutions to what we've heard. We hope to have information soon on our next installment of Coffee Chats. As part of our promotional efforts for Coffee Chats, we created a video from our first pour that we'd like to share with you. Okay, we finished our deck with the board calendar, reminding board members of the many opportunities available to interact with students, families, and community each month. And if any board member has anything to share regarding any school events you've attended or any interactions you've had in the community, now would be the time. Anyone? Ms. McCall?
All right. Where do I begin? Over the last couple of weeks, or since our last meeting, I had ample amount of time spent with the students and parents of our PS 205. I was able to accompany the Wabongo Leadership Council on their 2024 Toni Morrison College Tour. We visited schools in DC and Baltimore, Maryland. So we visited Howard University, Hampton University, Bowie State University. We were able to take the students to the National African American Museum of Art and Culture. We toured the National Mall. We even got a Capitol tour in with our connection, so they got to see the Capitol building. There were just the students of RPS 205 are just really awesome. They had a great time, great opportunities that, you know, most adults haven't been to the Capitol building, right? So very fortunate to be able to take those students along there. We also were able to, you know, while we were out of town, all of the things that were happening in town, you know, we were able to discuss with the students as well. And we were able to miss the Baltimore Bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. We were scheduled to go to Baltimore, Maryland that day, but our destination was a different route, so we didn't have to experience any of that from the from the Francis Scott Key Bridge. But it just was an opportunity to allow, it was from our students from 9th grade to 12th grade. We even had a couple of chaperone children, so it was a couple 8th graders on there as well. But just seeing the students being able to be afforded this opportunity and being able to just be in awe of, you know, we had a foreign exchange student that was from Spain who actually was on the bus as well. And, you know, all he knew was, is this where the riots was at? The Capitol building, this is where the riot was at. You know, he was so excited. It was like, nah, you know, the insurrection, you know, that type of thing. So it was a lot of learning opportunities and fruitful discussions that we were able to have with the students who attended. My voice is still a little raspy from that experience, but it was a good time. I've been chaperoning college tours since probably 2004. So it's really good to just have that closeness and that able to impart knowledge into those students as well. I think that was it. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Okay, that'll conclude our report.
Thank you, Ms. Stanford. Now we will hear from Vice President McCall, leading the Planning and Development Committee portion of the meeting.
Okay. So today we have, we have on the agenda letter A, 2025 budget request, nutrition services, transportation, SPED, student services, ed team. So tonight's FY25 budget request will be presented by Colleen Marchesi, is she here? Marchesi, I apologize. Executive Director of Nutrition Services, Michael Seif, Executive Director of Transportation, and Jennifer Lawrence, Chief of Student Services Officer for their respective departments. There is also a FY25 budget update attached to board docs from Dr. Brown, Chief Financial Officer, and Mrs. Marchesi will start us off tonight. Well, we'll do the transportation first. I'm sorry.
All right. Can you hear me? Well enough. All right. So transportation update for our budget. I'm going to skip through our organizational chart. You can ask questions on that later if you would like. Our transportation highlights, we are continuing to maintain our entire fleet. We had the opportunity at the beginning of the school year to use our RPS drivers and our fleet to ensure that the extended day program happened this school year. And then we expanded our maintenance area to create a safe and clean environment to work in. Another thing we have going on is we're working with our communications department and Graham Spencer to do an ad campaign to hire more drivers. So we are still actively looking for more people every day. In our transportation budget, the salaries and benefits are going down slightly. That's because of some bonus and incentives that are sunsetting. Under purchase services, the 6.7 million less is roughly 5.5 to 6 million was from first student that we did not extend into this year. That was earmarked for that extended day program. And then about $1 million for Everdriven, which does kind of the Uber for early childhood that we are not doing. That was paid for through grants and stuff. That was some extra set aside. In supplies, the 1.1, the big things are there was about $800,000 less in diesel and $100,000 less in propane. And then under capital, that 1.5 million is because we're not going to be purchasing new or used school buses next year. Under the detail of our contracts, you can see the 800 for the diesel, 105,000 savings for propane, and some oil from Rainbow Oil that just came in. You approved that tonight. So that'll be, it could be Kelly Williamson now, but about 10,000 less there. So our return on investment, we help make a difference in child's lives by safely delivering them to and from school. And I will take any questions.
Are there any questions? Mrs. Stanford?
I'm just curious why you think there's going to be such a decrease on the diesel fuel?
So we have less buses than we used to, and we had not reduced that before. And then now, instead of just buying, there's two types of diesel, a number 1 and then a number 2. We historically have always ran, because our buses were a lot older, we always ran a number 1 diesel. It's not as good for the environment. Number 2 is better for the environment. We are now in the summer or spring, fall running that number 2. It is a lot cheaper.
So we have less buses, but we're still able to bus everybody?
Yeah, we had, when we moved from the 2-tier to the 3-tier system, we lowered our buses and we did not lower our fuel consumption portion of the budget at that time. So okay. Now it's more in line.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Seeing none.
Okay, I just asked one real quick.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you. Is there a replacement for the Everdriven services?
There is not. That was under that federal grant. There is not currently. We did go through bid process. We are extending our contract with Sunrise for the next year, but we are going to try to keep that first student in there, and they do have a program that we could use. We're going to be talking to them, I think, next week about that.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Colleen Marchese. I am the Executive Director of Nutrition Services, and this is our admin organization chart. I have a couple pages of highlights. I'm going to touch on a few, so if you have questions about others, please feel free to ask me. One area I definitely wanted to highlight is our Titan software. This is a kind of all-encompassing program that we launched for the 22-23 school year. We continue to use it. It is all of our back-of-the-house processes, so everything from standardized recipes to inventory to production sheets, student information, etc. It's also our point of sale, so when we ring students up at our cash registers, that is where all of our meals are accounted for, as well as any alert messages that may come up for dietary or allergy modifications. It's also our parent or family portal, which is really exciting in terms of our interactive menus. So if you haven't checked it out, we encourage you to do so. It is listed by school. So if we ever have a change in the menu, those changes are listed at that specific school. And so parents and families and nurses and students themselves can see those updates. In addition, it has all of the nutrition information for everything on our menu, and has our top 9 allergy messages on there as well. So it's a really great resource that's not something we've had before the 22-23 school year. The other thing I wanted to highlight was our launch of the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Grant Program over at Constance Lane this year. Brian and I had some discussions about this time last school year that they were in need of an additional snack over there. ISB doesn't really have a AM snack program, doesn't exist. So we got creative and applied for this Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Grant. It's been really successful. It's been an integral part of their day now. And we intend to apply for that for next school year, as well as include another elementary school in that. So just one more opportunity for us to provide an additional snack. Another highlight I wanted to cover was our meal participation year over year. So I have data on there from the beginning of the 22-23 school year through February, and the same for this year. You can see that we did have 2 more service days in that time period, but even still, our average daily participation has increased over 2,800 meals a day. We're attributing that a lot to our launch of breakfast carts, which was also one of our highlights, as well as updates in our menu like made-to-order stations at our high schools, and really looking at our products to make sure that they're being well received by our students. So we introduced a new pizza brand this year. It's been wildly popular. So just a few, updates that we've made. So getting into the revenue, because of our increase in meals, we have seen an increase in our reimbursement. All of our reimbursement rates are tied to how many meals we serve, and so we've been seeing that increase, as I just shared. We do project an increase in our revenue for fiscal year 25 from the federal government. Obviously, the caveat with this is that this is assuming that our reimbursement rates will at least stay stagnant for next year. Unfortunately, I don't find that information out until July, so I haven't heard any news that will be changing dramatically, but just something to consider as we move forward. So that's going to be the greatest increase that you'll see in terms of the revenue on this slide. In looking at expenses, similarly to transportation, we will have some incentives that are sunsetting for fiscal year 25 when it comes to salaries and benefits. But we are currently in union negotiations, so we do anticipate some wage increases for that fiscal year to begin. So it comes out about even when you look at salaries and benefits. The other thing I want to highlight is our supplies section. This encompasses a lot of things, but the bulk of it is our food, which is obviously the majority of our operation. So as we see a growth in meals, we of course need to purchase more food. So that's why you're seeing an increase there. The non-capital highlight as well. This budget was primarily for upgrades for cafeteria tables, and we have actually this school year finished all of our upgrades for all of our cafeteria tables across all the schools. So right now everybody has new models of cafeteria tables, and so we've been able to dramatically reduce that, and we're just in maintenance mode now, make sure we replace a stool if it gets broken or a tabletop if it's needs repair. So that is another kind of big change for next year. These are our contracts currently. Not a lot is changing here. The major difference for Domino's Pizza is that we did go out to bid, and they still won. Slightly higher price for pizza as food costs increase. And then when it comes to our EMS Link, that is our Titan software that I highlighted. As our program grows and we change things and implement new programs like breakfast carts, we do need additional licenses. And so our annual cost has just gone up a little bit as we continue to pay for those licenses. And our return on investment in nutrition services is to have our students have academic success through proper nutrition. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Mrs. Haley?
So I never thought of nutrition services as revenue generating. So I understand the Illinois free state, the reimbursement we get from the state of Illinois. These other items under the revenue, are those reimbursements? I mean, apart from student sales?
Correct. So the NSLP and the NSBP, that's National School Lunch Program and National School Breakfast Program. So the majority of our funding comes from the federal government, and Illinois just is a smaller drop in the bucket. So we get about 4 cents for every meal from Illinois, whereas for federal, we get, dollars per meal. So I think it's over $4 right now for lunch and over $2 right now for breakfast.
Okay.
Yep.
The catering there?
Yep.
We cater?
We do. We do a lot of internal events for staff meetings, things like that.
Gotcha.
Catering was a pretty small line item during kind of the COVID and then the fallout of COVID times, just because people weren't meeting in person as much as they were. But those meetings in person have returned, so we continue to provide that service. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Anything else?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we will have Dr. Brown, giving his report.
Any questions on the update? There was just kind of a one-pager on progress we're making toward the budget. It was pretty self-explanatory, but I didn't know if anybody had any questions on that. So obviously, when we get to, the month of June, you'll actually see a really, really good cut of the budget. We'll have all the numbers rolled up, and so, that's when you really get a good picture. So, no questions there. I'm going to jump into the Forefront Power. That is one that Mike has been working on for quite some time, actually about 16 to 18 months. So as you can see from this report, we started out with about 13 schools that we thought we were going to be able to do solar on. Once all the engineering work was done by Forefront Power, it actually dropped down to 6 buildings, which you actually are going to see on here. So the good news of all this work was that even though it dropped from 13 to 6 projects, the original projected savings was about $15.4 million over the 20-year life of this project. Even though it's dropped from 13 down to 6, we're still going to be at a savings of about $15.0 million. So even though we decreased on the projects, by the time the engineering work got done on the 6 remaining projects, we actually picked up significant savings on those individual buildings. So overall, this ended up, we ended up with fewer projects, but almost exactly the same kind of savings. So the price you'll see on there went up a little bit from the original projections. And if we look at this second page here, you can see that we're at 0.065, on the PPA rate for kilowatt hours. We were at about 5.6 on the original projection. And again, that was with all 13 of the projects in there. So when it got whittled down to these, the PPA rate did go up a little bit. We're currently paying right now for electricity about 7.197 cents a kilowatt hour. And when Mike and I went out and checked to see what we could get on today's market for a 60-month deal, we'd be paying about 8.43 cents a kilowatt hour, and that's only a guarantee for 60 months. This is a guaranteed rate for 20 years at 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So we really did well, on the remaining projects that were able to qualify, for this. So that's really the project in a nutshell, the update. I don't know if you've got any questions on this. I know there's a ton of documents that were attached here, some of the individual agreements for the individual buildings, and then there's also a cancellation agreement in here for the 7 buildings that did not end up qualifying, to be part of this agreement. So documents for the 6, and then a cancellation agreement for the 7. So any questions on this one?
Mr. Carpenter.
Those 7 buildings, it was like the buildings weren't like strong enough to hold the solar
That was really it. Yeah, there were rooftop mounts, and a lot of these older buildings, they just weren't designed to be able to handle a load. So when you took the snow load into account and then put those panels up on top of those roofs, a lot of those roofs just couldn't handle the load. So it just made it cost prohibitive to try and, do something with those buildings.
Thank you.
Ms. Haley.
So I know there, at the other, some of our other locations, we have the ground mounts. That wasn't an option for where we couldn't put them on the roofs?
Yeah, at most of these other locations, there was just no room to be able to put enough panels on the ground to be able to justify it. The only option we really had was to try and put them on the roofs at those locations, and the buildings just couldn't hold them.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Brown. Item C, Zero Medical Card Administrative Agreement and Business Associate Agreement. Currently insured RPS employees and dependents have to pay an out-of-pocket deductible copay or co-insurance costs before receiving care. This may prevent some employees from seeking medical care that they need. Additionally, health care costs are rising for the district and its employees, which impacts the overall budget for the district. Zero Card will allow for the district, which is self-funded, to have a direct billing process for certain medical procedures at participating companies. This direct billing bypasses the insurance and allows the district to receive a discount on procedures. Employees who participate in the Zero Card option and receive treatment at the participating company will have $0 out-of-pocket expenses. The district would like to implement Zero Card to benefit both employees and the district. Are there any questions regarding the Zero Medical Card? This will be brought forward to the April 16, 2024 board meeting for action, as well as the forefront power behind the meter amendments to the original agreements. Item D, NIU Rise Elementary Education. Rockford Public Schools would like to partner with Northern Illinois University and Grow Your Own Illinois to offer an accelerated pathway for up to 25 paraprofessionals and other student support staff employees the opportunity to earn their professional educator's license with an elementary education endorsement while serving in their full capacity as student support worker with no loss in compensation while completing their degree requirements. The financial burden of tuition coupled with the loss in compensation while completing student teaching requirements is often a barrier that stops candidates from completing their teaching licenses. The RISE program eliminates these obstacles. Rockford Public Schools will partner with Northern Illinois University and Grow Your Own Illinois to deliver a 2-year licensures cohort in elementary education. Tuition costs for the RISE program will be paid utilizing the teacher vacancy grant. Grow Your Own Illinois will provide financial assistance for students who have any additional gaps in courses they need to take through Rock Valley College, which can be completed concurrently during the RISE program. NIU has designed the courses to fit the specific needs of the Rockford community to ensure teachers that come out of the RISE program are uniquely trained to be able to make a difference in the Rockford Public Schools. Employees accepted into the program will sign a 5-year commitment to teach in Rockford Public Schools. Are there any questions regarding the NIU RISE elementary education? Seeing none, this will be brought forward to the April 16, 2024 board meeting for action. We have a preview of the consent items. Items 9A through 9H are consent items for the Planning and Development Committees. I, Builder's Risk Insurance Coverage. Builder's Risk policy is needed for capital projects not covered under the district's general liability policy for summer construction projects. Are there any comments or questions on the consent agenda items?
I did have,
Mrs. Haley?
just as a follow-up, regarding the zero card, if I have questions about that, who can I ask? Oh, I guess I can ask now. I'm sorry, I didn't ask.
Ask was there any questions? No, go ahead.
So with the zero card, that's for employees of RPS 205, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm kind of reading through this agreement, and they have to use specific consultants?
Yes, so the way that Zero Card operates is that there are certain companies or vendors that participate in the program. So they go to a direct billing right with us for services rather than run through insurance. And so I will just use one example of an individual on our PPO insurance may go to our health center and the doctor sees them right there. They pay nothing to go to our health centers. It's $0 PPO. That doctor then says you need a scan, you need an MRI. And instead of it just going to a regular hospital, what we can do is request that the doctor basically write kind of like a prescription for an MRI, and you can go to Forest City Imaging. They are a participating company. And going to Forest City Imaging, two things occur there. Number one, the employee will pay $0 for that image out of pocket. Well, nothing will be cost to the employee. And instead of, and I'm making these numbers up, but instead of the MRI costing the district $1,000, it will actually only cost the district $400. And then Zero Card would add a percentage on top, so that may get it to $600, but the district still saves then $400 by the way that we bypass insurance and do a direct billing process for those procedures. So right now there are a certain number of companies that are included within the Zero Card program, but Zero Card is something I've been engaging with over the last 8 years, and we know that there'll be some larger companies once, because we're the largest employer, once we start participating, there will be more companies and more vendors that will participate, so that will offer more opportunities for our employees who choose to participate. This is not a mandatory thing that employees have to do, but it is one that we'll make available to them as an option.
So the savings is, we recognize the savings because we bypass those administrative costs?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Mrs. Bennett?
My questions are not regarding this, but thank you.
Is it regarding planning and development?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. It was before we went back up. So mine is just more of a statement. So letter E, Spring Creek gym acoustics and lighting. When Dr. Gallagher and I went and visited in the fall, something October, November, somewhere in there, this was a big concern that they had regarding their gym. So I'm just excited to see that this is on the agenda and something that's going to move forward for them, because I know it's a huge barrier for classrooms around the gym. So that was all I had.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. This will complete the report for the Planning and Development Committee.
Thank you, Vice President McCall. I will now present the agenda items for governance and committee. We have a very long list of policy changes. Do any board members have any questions, comments, or concerns, or would like to discuss any of the policies listed? Mrs. Bennett?
Policy 2.220, so letter B. Just something to note in here. I contacted legal about it just to kind of check, but added to this policy is if somebody needs to attend an open meeting via video, one of the exceptions now is unexpected childcare obligations, and it was a change in the law, and I just think it's a really cool new addition to the law. So I just wanted to make note of it because I love it. So.
Very good. Anyone else? So there is, As Board Policy 4.150 on December 19, 2023, the board revised Board Policy 4.60 to reflect the contract bidding threshold from $25,000 to $3,500. So just to, remind you of the 4.0. I did ask Lori to move forward with the recommended changes for 4.60 to bring before the board to vote on. Lori, do you mind, there is a process that she indicated, because, and then there was some additional information you requested. Mr. Youngblood did email me a list of vendors, but he did not indicate utilization, how many we were actually utilizing, or dates, or dollars, or anything like that. But Attorney Holy, do you mind going over the process regarding 4.60 and as to why that won't be available for April 16th?
Well, it wasn't ready for tonight, so we did start drafting it last week, and it'll go through the administrative team to review. We also are taking a look at our administrative regulation to make adjustments accordingly as well. So, and then I also had emailed Mr. Donovan asking for some additional information. I was trying to find the companies that we do business with who actually are registered,
right,
as listed in there. I didn't see anything other than our union partners who offer apprenticeship programs, so I'm not sure how we can confirm the businesses, but we'll draft the policy accordingly so that we will encourage the use of the apprenticeship programs.
Very good. And did Mr. Donovan provide the necessary information that you needed?
He provided what he had as far as those companies within Winnebago who are registered, and they're actually the union entities provide those, as well as one workforce place that works closely with the Carpenters Union.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
But it will be ready for May.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions regarding any policies? Okay. If not, we will go on to the consent items. Are there any questions regarding meeting minutes, prevailing wages memorandum of understanding, REA differential, flag football, REA memorandum understanding, RPS employer assistant housing program, or freedom of information law? No? We are now on to the we don't have any speakers. Okay, are there any comments or concerns for that any board members may have? So we're coming up to a year in regards to committees and officers, and that I have had conversation with board members, and for the most part, everyone feel like they're in their momentum. I heard the word momentum, heard the word we're in our groove. There is one special interest in regards to the performance and monitoring, and I am brainstorming on how that can be a win-win. So I'm going to give that some more thought. I think that it is fair to allow each board member to have that experience on the committee. If it requires a change, if not, then we have to figure out a way. Again, I'll have to figure out a way how it can be a win-win. So understand some board members have 4-year terms, some have 2-year terms, and I think that, whatever board members' desire is, within the time frame that they are currently serving, ought to be able to maximize their time on the board. So just keep that in mind. If there's any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out. Anything? Any discussions, concerns, topics? Okay, very good. If no other comments on agenda recommendations by the board, I'll take a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you and have a good night.